I mean, if you're a Bears fan, you're thinking forward progress. Come on.
10, 219, 219.
Forward Progress, a Chicago Bears podcast with Dan Bernstein and Matt Abaticola on 312 Sports.
We award you Forward Progress, a Chicago Bears podcast here on 312 Sports. I'm Dan Bernstein. That is Matt Abaticola. And the Chicago Bears are getting set to take on the Rams here in Chicago on what is going to be a frigid Sunday night at Soldier Field in the divisional round of the NFC playoffs. And here to talk about everything going on with the Bears and with quarterbacking is our quarterbacking guru. The city's quarterbacking guru, apparently. He is Tim Jenkins, the former NFLer and collegiate quarterback, and now a quarterbacking coach and expert. You can find him on socials at T Jenkins Elite. So, Tim, how are you? How you been? Happy New Year.
I'm doing great. I think, we were joking a little bit before coming on. It's a cool time.
Yeah,
especially after surviving all the Justin Fields breakdowns and everything, and where we've been. I think, it's really exciting.
All right, so let me pick up where I started our post game Saturday night when Maddie and I sat down right after this thing went final, and we're still kind of literally shaking. Yep. My belief is Caleb Williams, in some ways, is breaking what we do.
Yeah.
The way that we use stats and video and probabilities and still shots, every tool at our disposal to create an objective rubric for quarterbacking is in the hands of Caleb Williams. Almost, it's like what a cubist painter would do. This might be over here, and this is over here. Somehow the rules at times do not apply to him. And I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm struggling for some ways to use our systems and everything we do to make it make sense. And maybe we should just enjoy the fact that kind of some of it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. I think you're dead on in terms of the stats, right? I think you're not going to look at the box score, especially completion percentage type things, and really get an idea of how he played. I think, unfortunately, right, as my wife would say, because then people have to listen to me, the true answer is sometimes like, hey, we're going to have to go through. I joked, this last breakdown, it was like 25 clip. It went for an hour and a half, which you guys know me. I'm normally like a 25, 30-minute guy, and then I'm like, man, people are going to be sick of me. It went for like an hour and a half, but a lot of it was exactly what you're talking about, which is, man, we looked terrible on offense, and simultaneously the box score looked horrendous from a quarterbacking perspective. However, there was actually a lot of breadcrumbs on the tape where you go, shoot, man, we had to me, the Komet drop, then all of a sudden the bat down on fourth down. There are significant plays throughout this game where it was almost as if you could go on third and fourth down. I hate saying unlucky, but we had so many plays that I guess I would call improbable that went against us. And then all of a sudden, to me, people are like, well, what's the difference with Caleb in the third and fourth quarter? Well, Komet catches the ball. The ball doesn't get batted down. Like, that's the difference, right? 4th and 8. We have a 4th and 3. He has Luther Burden on a shallow route. The ball gets batted down. We all act like it's a terrible call. That play might be a touchdown. Well, then we have 4th and 8, and he jumps through somebody and completes the ball. That's the difference, right? One drive extends, one drive stalls. And then the Packers, they're not a terrible offense, right? They're going to move the football. So you sit there and you go, it was funny because and this is part of why, man, I wish that TV copy would zoom out a little bit, because I'm just a degenerate. And I decide I'm going to bet throughout the whole game the live money lines. However, I would have felt way better about those bets had the TV copy been zoomed out, because it's like, holy smokes, we have plays all over this field. We just weren't making them, whether it was the receivers catching, Caleb throwing a good football early on. Like, there were so many missed errors. But, back to your point, you're dead on in that we don't have a traditional measurement you can sit there and it's like, and again, I think his personality has kind of been, made it to where it's not as enjoyable. But last night, right, Aaron Rodgers was kind of the last quarterback from my childhood I remember watching, right, where it's like, man, he's going to, this might have been his last game. To me, I was sitting there, man, oh, that stinks. But you look at his box score, and it's like he's going to complete 60 or 70% of his passes. But you never thought that offense was going to be remotely as explosive last night as what you see from Chicago every week. So it is kind of one of those where he's breaking the rubric. And I also think it's why Ben Johnson can sit up there and his quarterbacks completing like 50% of his passes. And he goes, no, I like where we're at, is because he knows what he's asking him to make. He's asking him to make dig throws, like deep overs. He's not asking him to make a ton of bubble screens. So I think we probably have to factor that in. But yeah, it's been a fun ride, and it is interesting to see how much he is almost pushing against the grain of what we typically think makes, quality quarterback play right now in the NFL.
So you take all of that everything you just said there, and everything that's part of Caleb Williams and who he is as a quarterback. And Ben Johnson talked about this the other day, the balance he has to find as a play caller. How difficult is this job for Ben Johnson? Because he has the idea of getting Caleb warmed up and in a rhythm to throw the football. Yet the strength of his team throughout this year has been that offensive line and the run game and the production that Swift and Monangai have provided. Yet he has to find the opportunities to get Caleb warmed up and ready to go, need to rely on the strength of what your team does well, and yet you really can't measure what Caleb can do and when he's going to do it. So how difficult is this play calling for Ben Johnson right now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want the job, right? I mean, the pay would be great, and then if you were bad enough, you get fired and keep getting paid. But yeah, I don't want the job right now. I think, you look at it from Ben's perspective. The other thing that's challenging is I would tell you that when I watch the tape, I think more Caleb's errors come on quick game than they do on down the field shots, right? So
how so? Which errors?
Yeah, so to me, it's like, so they had a play where it was on fourth down. We call, everybody knows Hank, where you have the sit route over the ball and you have double curl. Well, so, hey, if the backer on the right side, if he leans in to take the Hank, boom, I work the curl to the right. I work the curl to the left. With the left side backer, what the Bears do instead is they do Hank, but instead of running curls, they run double cops, which is a corner stop. You're still attacking the same part of the field, right? So they run corners and they stop, turn back to the quarterback. Well, that to me is like a glorified quick game, right? You could say downfield, but it's really quick game. So you're sitting there and it's Caleb hangs on his deep Hank and then he forces it in there versus, hey, resetting, he's got a guy wide open. Those I think he struggles with more than when you call like a true run action, play action. Hey, we've got the deep over with the big dig route, because it's like that. He's just playing on time and he's ripping it. Now, there's a guy on Twitter right now making fun of Caleb because he threw that one interception where it's like, dude, that's clearly supposed to be a dig route, but whatever. But Caleb's doing a really good job, I think, in those sort of shot plays, where that I also think compounds this play calling issue that Ben has, where he's sitting there and he's like, man, you have this idea of I want to get Caleb into the game. Simultaneously, he's best when we're driving the ball down the field. So it's like, do you really want to come out in your first 10 and just, hey, man, we're going to run the ball and throw shot plays? Probably not, right? That's a recipe for 3 and out and getting the Rams going. Simultaneously, it's like, shoot, that might be what they have to. That might be the difference between, hey, how we're aggressively pushing the ball down the field late in the game when we're down versus how we start these games. Obviously, there's a happy medium that they'll eventually find. But I do think this week presents an interesting challenge because it's one of those where I think the Bears run game, you can try to keep this Rams offense off the field. I do think when I watch teams play, however, in the playoffs, there's a piece of me that goes, you think about when we've seen Mahomes in the playoffs and Josh Allen and some of these great quarterbacks, and the nature is always, hey, run the ball, slow the game down, keep them off the field. I can't remember, and I know there will be someone listening to this who will tweet me and be like, all right, dummy, here's the time. But it's hard for me to remember a time where you saw a true, keep the other team off the field game plan and mentality lead to a big win. So for me, it's like I almost want to reverse that, and I almost want Ben Johnson to be more aggressive, knowing that we've got to keep up with Stafford and McVay, because to be frank, I think we can. Like this Bears offense, we can look at some of the stats and where they struggle, But I don't know about you guys, but it does feel like every week I turn I turn it on and I think to myself, dude, they are driving the ball up and down the field between the 20s. Now, of course, every team can stall out in the red zone, but holy smokes, it's like, it feels like, oh, dang it, we're pinned. And then all of a sudden, 3 plays later, it's like, all right, we're on their side of the field, right? I just feel like there's something to this team where, especially late in the game, and I just want to see them get to that earlier. And I hope we don't go into the game plan, and I don't think we will with Ben, honestly, but I hope we don't go in there thinking, hey, let's keep Stafford off the field. I hope we go in there thinking, let's turn this into a track meet and outscore them.
But isn't there also an understanding like the Eagles game where that the running game takes a different kind of physical toll on your opponent? And we'll talk, I'm sure, about the difference going up against their 3-4 and knowing they've got that big nose tackle and they're anchoring things. But over time, some of those runs that are not paying off early can get them late. The exact same calls, whether it's outside zone, whether you have some of the, they've run split flow, they've run duo, whatever it may be, right at some of these guys late in a game. It's going to be 7 degrees. It's probably going to be 5 degrees by the end of the game. And I'm just wondering how much investment, how you balance this with the quick strike capability with the investment in that physicality that pays off late.
I think you're 100% correct. I mean, you don't have to go any further than the Swift touchdown this last week, right? It's they pound the ball, and then guess what? You're at the 6-yard line, right? And you run basically a design cutback. You put Zacchaeus in the backfield, so it's like it kind of looks like a little funky look to where their eyes are going to go with him in the flat. But to me, it's like you don't have to look any further than that. To be that late in the game and basically have a walk-in touchdown from the 6-yard line, that right there should be the only sales pitch needed to attack via the run game early. And I think they will. I think the bigger question is, do we see them pair the run game with shot plays early, or do we see them pair the run game with more of the quick game? That's what I think is going to be an interesting chess match in terms of what Ben comes out doing. Does he feel like he needs to sequence these calls differently? That I'm really interested in. I do think the screen game hasn't been utilized to the degree that it probably can. I mean, if you think about the first 3rd and long, they converted, what was it? It was just bubble screen, right? It was bunch bubble screen. They flipped it out there. They converted it. And I think that was an interesting call when you think about how many of these defenses nowadays walk 6, 7, 8 guys up at the line of scrimmage and then bail out on 3rd and long. I thought it was kind of interesting. Hey, we'll just go bunch. You walk 7 guys up. Guess what? We'll just throw it out there and, we'll trust our guys to block 2-on-2 and our guy to pick it up. I think it's an interesting kind of piece of it. Obviously, it plays into then later in the game when they pump the screen and go vertical. But I do think, that's what I think I'm most interested to see. I think you're dead on that, hey, we've got to attack, especially in the run game, especially, considering the conditions. I'm interested to see what we pair with that run game early on.
Talking about the run game and that touchdown by Swift, how surprised are you this year in what you've seen from DeAndre Swift? Given the fact it's his 6th year, his production has gone up the last 3 years, and that goes with more carries, obviously. But to produce what he's doing this year in his 6th season on this team, what have you seen from the start to finish and your level of evaluation?
Yeah, you're dead on. He looks like a completely different player, right? And I think, it's easy to say, okay, hey, look how explosive he is in the running game when we block everybody up. But I think he's doing a heck of a job when you think about, hey, you look at his yards per carry when he gets hit at or behind the line of scrimmage, he's still doing a quality job of making a positive play, right? I think in the run game too, or in the pass game, I think he does a heck of a job too, whether it be protection or when they use him to get out in the, some of those read flats when they're working those layer concepts. So yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it's an interesting one too, because he comes from Detroit, right? Where Ben was. It's just an interesting dynamic that he's been able to kind of restart his career. And again, his production might be similar to last year. I'll tell you, as a player, though, it looks like he's way more explosive in this offense. It looks like he's, they talk about run game tracks when you're a running back, right? Hey, here's where we want you on this play. Here's where we want you aiming on this play. It feels like he's way more confident in his tracks in this, where it's, he presses the hole before he cuts versus last year. And again, I think last year is an interesting case study of, how well were some of these things defined versus what they are this year. But I do think he looks way more confident in his tracks. And then obviously I think he's a key cog to this whole thing. It is popular to just talk about Caleb, right? And I do think there's a lot that he's done, obviously, late in games to deserve that. But I do think, I think Monangai and him, to me, have been, key cogs to this thing rolling, especially when you start thinking about how teams load the box at times against some of our personnel packages. It's obviously because they respect the way these guys can be explosive in the run game.
Unsurprisingly, we're already hearing the game framed as Sean McVay against Ben Johnson. And I kind of laugh because that really is not the case.
Right.
It is Sean McVay against Dennis Allen.
Yeah.
It is Ben Johnson against Chris Shula.
Yep.
And one thing I know Chris Shula is doing right now is figuring out how to neutralize or minimize Colston Loveland.
Yeah.
And look, make no bones about it. Like, he's looking for 84. And this is, I don't think you can cover him with just one guy right now. I think he's leveled up multiple times in the last few weeks. The question I have to you is, if you know that he might be bracketed, if you know that there's going to be coverage rolled in that direction, shaded over there and leveraged over there, what's the response? What now becomes more likely to hit that's on your call sheet?
Yeah, I'm putting him outside. I'm putting him outside, and I'm putting DJ or whoever I want to get the ball to in the slot. So, hey, you want to bracket him? Great. You're going to have to walk that safety out super wide in order to bracket, because now he's our number one receiver. So then and to me, how you get there is interesting. You probably start, to me, I'd start Colston Loveland in a 3-quarter split, and I'd short motion down my receiver, right, to where they eventually get to the slot. DJ Moore does. Colston's outside. You want to bracket him? Great. Then you go ahead and you can run some benders, or you can run dagger, all the stuff that we love. And those middle of the field shots end up remotely wide open, or you're going to walk that safety out. You're going to have to stick in too high, and guess what? We're going to be able to run the football. So I think the fact that Loveland's come alive is huge to this. You ultimately are limited from a defensive perspective, I think, in terms of how creative you can be when you double a tight end. Because when you have a bracket on the tight end, there's only so many things. There's only so many ways you can get to that and disguise it, especially with how much they move him around from a wing, or he's outside standing up as the slot. Like, it's so much easier, in my opinion, to bracket like an X, right? Where you have that old school X receiver backside. It's so much easier to bracket him, or, play with your eyes to him and then leave the double if you have to. Whereas I think with a tight end, it's significantly harder. I think you're dead on, though. Can you cover him one-on-one in passing situations? I don't think so. The issue, though, becomes is on first and second down against the 12 personnel, against the 13 personnel, do you really want to be bracketing him and taking essentially one out of the run game? Or do you want to live and die with, okay, hey, we're going to play isolated coverage on him because we want another guy heavier in the box? That's going to be another interesting chess match of how do they play him on early down and distances? Because then when you go back and watch the tape, I'm telling you, we almost hit 3 sail routes in a row to Colston Loveland for a touchdown. And I honestly think the last one, and I'm not usually one of those guys who's like, begging for PI all the time. That last one felt like a big grab in the end zone, right? To where it's like, that's tough for me to not think that one's pass interference, but they dang near hit 3 sails in a row to score a touchdown. So I don't know how you couldn't think that you're going to bracket him. The other thing is then you start thinking about, hey, what are Colston's routes that he's good at, right? He's getting to the flat. He's running stick. He's running sail. He's not that, you don't see him that often on the in breakers. He's there, but is he a primary on those? No, which is another interesting one, because then what are you going to do? You're going to put your backer and outside leverage on him when he's down in a wing. And if you do that, how easy is it to just run inside zone, which the Bears love to do? So I think it's a tough one to decide how you're going to cover him, which also makes me think I wouldn't be shocked. It's funny from a just logical perspective to say, hey, I watched that game and we're going to still play isolated coverage on Loveland seems insane. However, I think there's a really good chance we get it just because of, I think, how hard it is to double these tight ends. You think about the greats that we've had, Gronk, Tony Gonzalez, all these guys, it was always harder to double them than it was Calvin Johnson. And it's because just the structure of an offense and how much those tight ends can move around and okay, now I've got a backer on him, but that backer needs to be in run support. It's just significantly harder, I think, to double those guys.
And what I love, too, about Loveland is if they are going to bracket him or try to double him at all, he has the ability to run routes outside the numbers, in between the numbers and the sideline. And Caleb has the ability to make those throws pretty easily to get him out there. So I love that they have that concept that they can also divert back to that to kind of take away, all right, we're not going to do a sail route, we're not going to run the middle, but we're going to run him outside, and he's going to blow past whoever you have covering because it's not your number one cornerback on him. It's a linebacker or it's a nickelback, and he's going to beat those guys easily. When you look at what he's done in this season, his progression and his growth and his learning of the run scheme and blocking and the passing tree routes and what he's done with his hands, how difficult is it what he's done this year from his growth perspective, from coming in injured to where he is now as the best receiver on the team?
Yeah, how difficult it is. It's extremely difficult, I think, just to get lined up in your assignment in this offense if you're a tight end, if I'm being honest. We have San Francisco going to Seattle this week, and we talk about the use check guy a ton, right, in terms of his usage from a motion perspective, a slice perspective. They're essentially asking Loveland to do a very similar thing and be better in the passing game, right? So to me, that's what's extremely difficult. I also am not going to sit here and pound the table in terms of I think his blocking is elite yet, right? I think there's a lot of growth there. Mm-hmm. However, we've never had a really great pass-catching tight end who's a tremendous blocker. Gronk comes to mind. He still would whiff a lot, right? Like, we all love Robbie G and hearing him on Fox, but let's be honest, he still wasn't elite in the run game. He was at times when you got a corner on him, right? But I don't think, those guys never want to really get their head in there, and neither do I. So I don't blame him one bit for it. However, just he's always in a spot. He knows where he can and can't get beat. I think he's doing a really darn good job just in terms of, okay, all the shifts and motions that he's got to handle. And again, I'm not his tight end coach, right? I'm not sitting here, knowing truly, hey, his grades. But I'll tell you, in terms of guys that I feel like, man, when I watch the structure of play, it seems like this is a busted route. He is very rarely that guy. So to me, it's like that's a tremendous sign when you can sit there and go, man, it feels like he's always in the right spot as a rookie with what I think the verbiage is coming into that huddle and what he's got to handle. I think that's a darn good sign into what he can become long-term.
Puka Nacua lines up at the X, the split end, at the Z, the flanker, and at the F, which is often the designated slot position. They move him all over the place to try to do exactly what we're talking about with Loveland, and that is create some of these mismatches. With everything you've said about these rules of thumb, about you can do this with a tight end, you can do this with an X, what can you do with Nacua to be aware of whatever position he's playing to limit his effectiveness?
Yeah, this is one that you got to watch the first 3 passing attempts from this Rams offense, because basically all 3 go to him and he's lined up in a different spot every single time. So it's like he's in a short split, he's in a cut split, and he's a Z. Okay, they hit it to him. Then he's in a wing split and they motion him into the fullback position, and then they throw it flare out to him, and then they line him up as tailback and they run Viper, which is an option concept, and he scores a touchdown. So to me, yeah, what you're asking is the right question. How easy is it to double him? It's virtually impossible without just designating 2 guys for him. That's why you see it's funny, because this is what I always think is funny, is because you sit there and you go like, if you were just to drop a game plan from a logical perspective, you would say, okay, hey, here's the guy we want to double. Here's this. These great offensive coordinators know that, though. So they go, okay, hey, if you want to double him, guess what? We're going to line him up all over the field to the point that you would basically have to remove 2 players from your defense. Well, you can't do that and play, because we all love Ben Johnson and Sean McVay and LaFleur and all these guys and we all revere them like McDaniels, and we think like, man, these passing concepts are awesome. Their run game is dynamic, right? Like they're not just spending all summer on, hey, I'm drawing up new passing cards, right? This is sophisticated run game, and that's why you can't do it. You can't just remove two. So he's one of those guys that, to be honest, I have no idea really how you would do it outside of play soft. To me, I've always had this belief, and this is, again, probably because I'm an offensive guy, but I've always had this belief where I prefer a press, heat 'em up defense when I see dynamic offenses, because I've always had this feeling where it's like, okay, one, can we get the ball out of this quarterback's hand early?
Well, that's what the Bears did in the second half.
Yeah. And
they did exactly what you're saying. It's like, look, we're just gonna speed everything up, and then if we stop the run on the way to the quarterback, great, and they did.
Yep. And I think, there's a world in which the Bears, walk a bunch of guys up, they run press man, and Stafford just gashes them, right? Like that's very realistic because he's that good of a player. However, I think it's much better than what you saw the Panthers do, which is play soft shell with the game on the line, and it basically looked like a walkthrough. I don't know if you guys watched that game live, but it was like, again, I'm big on the live money lines right now, but I tell you what, man, there's like, that was the easiest money I think I've ever made. That felt like a walkthrough. When you watch the Rams team get the ball, it was like they went down the field and it felt like on air, right? Like that was not difficult. And you look at it and it's soft shell coverage, and you just can't give that to Stafford. So to me, I think you're going to have to go press man. Will Puka still beat you? Inevitably at times, yes, the same way I think DJ does, the same way I think Loveland does. With that being said, I think it's the only realistic way to force enough negative plays to hang in this, we got to keep, to me, I don't see, and I'm going to say this and then the Bears are going to rout them and it's like, whatever, I'm an idiot. But I don't see the Bears winning this game by 10 plus. I could see the Rams winning this game by 10 plus, but I do see the Bears winning a tight one. And I think in order to generate enough negative plays for this to be tight, I think we've got to do that. I honestly, if this game's a blowout one way or another, I would be thinking it's the Rams. If this game is tight, I don't know how you could bet against the Bears with everything that they've done this season. And a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, their schedule. Okay. They've won a bunch of tight games against good ball clubs too. So to me, if this game's tight, I lean Bears. If it gets out of hand, I'm thinking it's the Rams are getting it out of hand. Again, I could be an idiot, but I just don't see a world in which, we can kind of play soft coverage and think that we're going to contain this offense.
All right, so if you have that in mind and you have to keep it tight to keep this game close, two of the most important players on the defense are Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon, guys that are rehabbing from injuries in the middle of a season, which, as you know, is nearly impossible to do until they get out of the season to rest and get ready. So what can the Bears do, and how can players like that, where even not at their best, they're still better than the next guy up, what can they do to be effective in this game, guys like Johnson and Kyler Gordon?
Yeah, see, it's so interesting to me because it's like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm watching that game late, and it's clear, right? They were just targeting one guy. There is a piece of me where I sit there and I go, do we really not have someone that can run full speed right now? Like it's not a knock, right? It's not that I don't think he's a good player. It's just that it's like, if you can't run full speed, you can't run full speed. That I think is probably my biggest fear when I talk about let's heat them up and play coverage, because you're going to eventually have to get to man. How can they pull it off? I think obviously you're going to have to be as exotic as possible against this offense, because the thing that we take for granted is I think Sean and Ben are both equal in generating the wide open play, right? Like you guys know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say we have a lot more wide open plays for Caleb this year than last year, right? Like we just have better scheme. Sean and him are equal. Where the Rams have the huge edge is Matthew's been in this system for how many years versus Caleb. So it's like, you have to then amp up the disguise, because you no longer have the, hey, I might potentially bust this play just because I'm early on in the system, right? Like the Bears still have that every once in a while where you can tell Caleb's feet are indicating, I'm not sure, right? You can just tell that. You ain't getting that anymore with Stafford. And that's part of what's great about keeping an elite quarterback, like I think the Bears finally have, and then, year 2 looks different, 3, 4, 5. We're going to have to amp up the disguises. The only way I think to truly hide those guys is be super variable in your pressure fronts, be super variable in your coverage behind it. I always don't like the 33, right, where you heat zone them with 5 and you play 3 deep, 3 under. I've always hated that coverage. We're going to have to do it a little bit because it's just you can't sit there and only play man with who we have out there. But we are going to have to we're going to have to just vary the look. We have to make it to where they're snapping it with 8 seconds or less, and not because they're, that's just the timing they want, because he's trying to decipher. If we can get to where that play clock starts dwindling down frequently, that's a really good sign in terms of a veteran quarterbacks trying to sort it all out, and you have them on their heels a little bit. So that's something to look for. If you see Matthew Stafford snap the ball with 12 seconds left, 10 seconds left, we're going to be in trouble, right? But if all of a sudden it's like it's getting late in the play clock because he's trying to decipher everything, I think that's going to be a positive sign for this Bears defense.
I think tempo then is something to watch too, right? Because some of that is within McVay's control. And if we start seeing them realize that they've got a personnel group that they like, or they've got a matchup that they like, and they're beginning to dictate some of that would be, in my mind, another indicator that, okay, this is what we want. Keep it on, get it moving, get in and out, call multiple plays each huddle.
I've always loved, I don't know about you guys, but just from an offensive perspective, I really have always loved the sugar huddle. If you're kind of, if you've got somebody out there that you like, I've always liked that, where it's the sugar huddle. We can still talk to our line, but it's like the receivers are all out there. And then the threat of the receivers being out there forces them to not substitute. I've always loved that. The substitution rules where the guy then holds you up. It's a different world now, man. When I was coming up, I remember, it was the start of that no huddle in college. I was kind of on the cusp of that RPO no huddle stuff. And it's like, I remember yelling at not the white hats, but the umpire, spot the ball. I remember,
it was Chip Kelly, right?
Yelling at him.
Wasn't it Chip Kelly? It was like Oregon, and Chip Kelly was really the guy who was just had forced them to have somebody standing on the football.
Yep, and I remember, I played good old D2 RMAC football, yelling at those guys. It's like the guy, he's a hot dog vendor. He just got done doing hot dogs. Now he's out there spotting the football, and I'm just yelling at him, But it was just a different world because we didn't have to wait. We could be, here's a funny story, and this is what, it's interesting because this is part of then what gets the rules modified. But shoot, we had a rule where if you're running a deep route, you run a go route, you don't come back. You just run off the sideline. The next receiver's on, right? If we threw the stick route, that guy runs off the field. Next guy's on. We're ready to snap the ball. It's like we just ran. Their corner's still 48 yards down the field, right? And we got new receivers up. We're on the ball, and these guys are sprinting back. And it's part of, if I were to give you a long opinion, it's part of what I do think depleted quarterback IQ for a long time was that it was so much easier. All we saw was shell coverage because you couldn't get into anything else. Well, now then defenses, because they can sub, they're starting to amp up the looks. And I think offenses haven't caught up yet. It's a whole interesting thing. We could talk this offseason. It's an interesting concept, I think, in terms of what hurt football IQ there for a while with some young quarterbacks. But back to what they're doing. Yeah, I love the sugar huddle. I do think you'll see it from the Rams, where if they feel like they've got us caught in a personnel group, they will. It's tempo, but it's not, right? It's enough of a threat that Stafford could get under there and, hey, he'll take advantage if you got 12 on the field, so you can't sub. But simultaneously, they're still going at whatever pace they feel like, but they're just got the threat of an imminent snap. So it's an interesting one. You're right. We will see that if they catch us in something, especially if they catch us in something where it's like we're forced to put one of our, quote unquote, not full speed guys on one of their better receivers. If they catch us in something like that, that's again where you see game management, burn a timeout, get the right personnel group on the field. But it's interesting. I'd be lying to you guys if I said I'm not as excited about this matchup as I would have been if the Eagles pulled it off, right? It's kind of funny to say that, right? It's like I'd rather the higher seed have won. I'd rather see the Eagles come into Soldier Field right now. With that being said, we're in the divisional round of the playoffs. It is what it is. You're going to play good ball clubs. But I do think this Rams offense does present a tough challenge for these guys.
I've actually, Tim, I've called this NFC playoff so far the way I wanted it to go. I wanted the Niners to go to Seattle. I think the Niners will beat Seattle.
Yep.
The Bears beat the Rams, and then the Bears get the Niners at home for the NFC Championship game, which would just be absolutely mind-blowing. And looking at the wild card weekend, though, since the NFL expanded the playoffs, home teams have won about 66% of the time. Over the last 8 seasons, that's dropped down to 53%. And then this past weekend, we have 5 road teams win in the 6 games. The Bears, the only home team to win the wild card game. Why do you think that is happening within the NFL playoffs?
I mean, I think the 4-5 has always kind of been like that, right? The 4-5 has always kind of been like that, where you felt like the 5 was better than the 4, right? They just snuck in because the division was trash or whatever. But what I will say, man, is I don't know about you guys, but I do feel like the NFL is at an all-time high from a parity perspective. Mm-hmm. I almost feel like, and let's remove the quarterback position, but I almost feel like the biggest parity right now is coaching. I almost feel like we have so many where the spread like leans, I'm almost betting on these head coaches more than anything. It's like, sure, your nickel corner is better than ours, but we're going to actually get into quality looks. And again, I'm not trying to trash Sirianni or the Eagles or whatever, but it's like, there's no shot. You start thinking about, hey, if this game's tight down the stretch, who do you want calling plays? Mm-hmm. Right? The Eagles guy or Shanahan? I don't even think that's a question. To me, it's, and I think Ben Johnson now has elevated the Bears into that conversation where it's like, you have McVay coming to town and he's proved it more obviously than Ben has, but I have a hard time thinking, man, we're like, if this was last year, I'd be excited to watch the Bears, but you guys know the deal. Right? McVay coming to town, you thought we're going to lose by 30. Like, I mean, it just is what it is. And I know we pulled some games out last year, but Ben Johnson has us in a place where it's like you feel so much more confident in this coaching. If you were to give an edge to a coach, it's almost like you feel like, hey, McVay has, he has a better track record, but man, you feel like this Bears team wants to play for this dude, and you feel like this dude has them dialed in. So for me, it's interesting. I think maybe the coaching spread is bigger. I also think the scheduling, to me, plays a factor because you sit here and it's like you got Buffalo, and I'm not going to lie. I don't know the numbers in terms of strength of schedule or whatever, but it does feel like you look at a team like Buffalo and it feels like they have so many dang primetime games against good teams that, yeah, it was inevitable that their record wasn't going to be as good as the Jaguars, but you got Buffalo going down to Jacksonville, and I get it. Jacksonville's a complete ball club, and we're excited for Liam Cohen. You still got Josh Allen coming to town. Like, I don't, to me, it's, if the Chiefs would have snuck in there as a 7 with Mahomes, that game, if instead of having LA go to New England, you have Kansas City, you start sitting there going, maybe I feel good about this other team going to New England. So it's interesting. It's an interesting time between the scheduling and the coaching parity that I do feel like it's created for an awesome product. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I was sitting down on Sunday. Granted, it was great that the Bears won Saturday, right? Get that out of the way.
It certainly helped.
It's still great.
I was sitting there Sunday, and it's like, dude, I was glued to that TV. It was incredible just to watch that for the whole day. It was awesome.
Can I go back to the chalkboard real quick? Because while I got you here, I've just my things are kind of dancing in my head a little bit, and it has to do with the assignments, with the roles of the Bears receivers now that Rome Odunze is back in Rome and Burden and DJ Moore. When you talk about the dagger concept, which in general there's the speed clear out that is going to open up the deep cross. When you called sail, and the best of my understanding of sail is adding a third in there, adding a shallow cross to go with that deep 45-degree angle, and again that the clear out speed route. When you see how dynamic and twitchy Luther Burden is right now, is he the guy you want targeted on that cross, or is his speed enough to merit the draw away attention with the deep shot? Like how would you hand out these roles?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And honestly, with those three, you're probably not wrong however you do it. If you were to ask me, hey, Tim, you've got to do it. What I'm doing is that Rome's in the slot. Rome's in the play slide slot. DJ's outside because then Rome, if you think about it, Rome is our clear guy on dagger where DJ's got the big in. And then Rome is our sail runner when DJ has the clear. So I put Rome in the slot. I put DJ outside because if I'm being honest, I like a 20-yard dig to DJ more. I just think DJ, I know he had the drop. I think he's a really tough football player. There's not a lot of times that I'm worried about throwing DJ Moore the ball over the middle. I think he's going to try to catch it no matter what. Mm-hmm. Luther, to me, is the one that I'm putting on the backside, and on dagger, he'd run the shallow because if I get man coverage, I'm just thinking let Luther run away from him all the way across the field, and I'll get it to him. And then he's the guy that would motion then into trips and be the flat runner on the sail concept. And I love that because you're not going to hit him immediately, but if you get a bunch of sink in your coverage, you hit Luther Burden outside with a guy 8 yards off him.
And he's only got one guy to beat. Yeah, there's no second guy there. Okay.
Yeah. So that's probably where I dish it out. I think, honestly, in any good offense, right, you're going to see those guys in all the different spots because you don't want to be, you're not going to be limited to that. But if you were to say, hey, Tim, draw it up, it's third and got to have it in the fourth quarter, who's doing what? That's where I would be putting those guys. But if I'm being honest with you, Rome coming back from injury, if I'm third and got to have it, man, I want the progression to go DJ Moore down. I mean, if I'm removing Loveland, I want DJ Moore to Luther Burden, right? That's what I want right now. And again, it's not a shot at Rome. It's just where I think he's at coming back from injury. That's who I want. And if you watch some of the tape, Rome didn't have the same sort of separation on these overs and things that we've traditionally seen from him. And again, I do think there's a difference between being healthy enough to go and remembering what it's like to stair step somebody and get across the field in a game. And it's funny. I played for Jeff Fisher, who, a lot of people remember as the 8-8, I'm tired of this 8-8 BS. But what I'll never forget him saying is talking to rookies and saying, I want you guys to understand the difference between practice speed and the preseason game, preseason and a regular season, and then regular season and postseason. It is so different. And again, this is Rome's first experience of that jump as well. So I do think, I think we'd be naive to think he's going to jump back in and do it perfectly. I think we'll see a build throughout the playoffs. But if you're saying, hey, Tim, you got to call something, it's third and got to have it. To me, the primary is DJ. My next guy's Luther. And that's kind of how I'd be rolling throughout the rest of these playoffs.
All right, Tim, last question I have for you. And I know you said you don't want the play calling job for the Bears, but I know you've watched so much film, and I know you know these guys. There has to be a point in time you're watching film, and there's a play in your head.
Yeah.
You got this personnel, you got this staff right now, this roster, and you got one play to make. What play are you calling from the sideline?
I'd be calling waggle country. I think, if I had one shot play to put in, we're getting into 12 personnel. So we got Komet and we have Loveland out there, right? We've got Luther Burden, right side. We got DJ Moore, left side. And what we're running is we're going to run country. So we're going to run waggle footwork. So play action, roll to the right. DJ's going to act like he's running the over route. He's going to snap it back to the same side. Luther Burden's on the big country post. So it's really a design throwback to DJ, but if the safety rolls it, we've got the big country post. And then I'd have just Loveland
they've run that.
And I'd give it to
they don't you remember that was a Justin Fields play.
Hit DJ Moore for the game winner against the Packers.
Yeah, and it was also that was Justin Fields' favorite play where they would run it to the second tight end.
Yep. See, I'm kind of naive. I don't like the tight ends in it. I like the receivers.
You're a purist. I know you're a purist.
The big reason I like the receivers, again, each team would be different, but the big reason I like it with the Bears is because I do think DJ Moore is a traffic catcher. So to me, it's like we've always done that. You've always done that throwback with the tight end because you always felt better with them in traffic. To me, DJ is that. I love that guy. And I know that, he's dropped it, and I know that he hasn't had the season that maybe we expected. But there's just something about that dude when I watch him and think in a big moment, I want the ball in his hand and see if he can do something with it. Because he does feel like a glorified running back out there with better speed, and just give him the ball and try to have a DB tackle him.
Yeah, he may not have had the season that we've all wanted or expected, but the last few weeks when it's counted,
Yeah.
That dude's been there and come through.
2 walk-offs against the Packers. At some
Right.
point, you get a statue for that, right?
Oh, it's being built right now. Don't you worry.
Well, I think this conversation has really helped me get ready for the next game. I've been kind of reveling in the excitement of Saturday night now. And I think this is my sort of transitional conversation to have
Turning the page.
Have me thinking about this Rams game now, because there is a lot going on. I guess this is one of these game plans where it's more about what you pair away. It's like so many of these guys, that both McVay and Johnson are like, oh, we could do this, or we could do this, we could do this. And at some point, your card just can't have this all on there.
You're dead. I mean, listen, some of the best advice you're ever going to hear as a coach is the best players are the ones that don't make it on the call sheet, right? It's true, especially coaches tend to do this. I don't care what level it is. It could be me coaching my third graders, right? You overdo it. You're putting in 14 new concepts because of what we can do. And really, you just kind of got to trust your guys at this point in the season. One final thing I'll say, though, and I'm with you where it was like the excitement from Saturday, is I do my best to just try to cover these guys. I'm not going to act like I haven't grown to love the Chicago Bears, because I do. And I find myself getting happy or sad based on how they do, which is something I got to work on, because
that's
my
problem.
son's like, hey, did the Bears win or lose? They're trying to figure out what kind of mood I'm going to be in. But what I will say is, how cool is this? I genuinely mean that. I just think it's the coolest thing, the most deserving fan base. And the fact that we're sitting here and it's like, we've got a divisional home playoff game in year one. And I know no matter what, we won't be able to keep perspective, myself included. We won't be able to say, hey, if we lose this weekend, nobody's going to be able to sit there on Monday and say, hey, let's keep perspective. We're all going to be pissed off. With that being said, I just think it's awesome. I'm fired up for it. And I think there's something to be said, man. Cold Soldier Field, this team coming to town, there's a good chance. I know they're an underdog right now, but I do think there's a good chance the Bears pull it off.
Love it. Thanks, Tim.
All right, I'm ready. Tim, thanks so much, man. Always appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk to you soon, buddy. Take care.
That is Tim Jenkins of T. Jenkins Elite. You can follow him. He does all the full breakdowns of every pass that Caleb Williams throws.
Waggle Country.
Waggle Country.
I'm really excited about this for this weekend and it's happened the last several weeks. What play have they been working on, whether it was early in the year or the last few weeks only, that Ben Johnson has been saving for this game? Like, what is that one play that we're going to see? Because it's happened, Dan. It's happened. And obviously I'm not asking you to be like, what is that play? Because you have no idea. But when it's done, when the game's over, we're going to go back and say, all right, there's the play. Last weekend it was that pump screen. And then you hit DJ Long. Something they saw happen to them in the Commanders game, week 6. And we heard Caleb say they've been working on it the last 3 or 4 weeks.
It's funny, though, because where that sounds like a novelty, it sounds like a luxury. You know what that is? That's NFL football.
Right, it is. And that's what I'm like, what play is it, though?
Yeah, but the point being that we're not used to it as following this particular team.
Right.
That it's never been that way, where they're in that rarefied air when it comes to having the wherewithal to do it.
Right.
That this is installed in August.
Right. No, you're right. And it's just we're not used to it. And that's I'm not used to it.
Right.
I'm
that's
used
why
to
it feels new and different and
right.
exotic.
I'm used to
it's just football.
80% of the passes being behind the line of scrimmage, and hopefully we can run the football. That's what I'm used to. And knowing that this is what NFL coaches do and what NFL offenses do, God, you actually you steal a play that happened to you in a game, and then you incorporate it and then work on it week after week after week until the very right moment that it's there. It's just, it's a concept we're not used to, and I love it. I love talking to Tim. That's great stuff. And I'm hoping to see a Waggle Country here in this game.
All right. Good stuff. You got anything else on your list of things you want to do?
I don't. I mean, I had
Okay.
more questions for Tim. We could have just kept talking. I could talk to Tim for 90 minutes.
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah.
How awesome was that Bears game
Oh,
Saturday?
my God. Which one?
Saturday night.
Okay.
Wasn't that great?
It was great.
Okay. Just a question.
Oh, there was something. I don't know what the publication was, but apparently some Green Bay Packer fans, they want to force somehow Ben Johnson to apologize for his behavior.
Stop. You're making that up.
I'm serious.
They want an apology?
Yes.
For what? For swearing at
For
them?
his behavior.
For not liking them?
Yeah. for the way that Ben Johnson treated Matt LaFleur.
Because the handshake? They want an official. There's a petition asking for an official apology?
Let's see. Where was it?
Okay. I don't. Cute.
Maybe this isn't even real. The Spun? I've never heard of it.
No, it's probably. But that's
story by Andrew Holleran. NFL fans are calling for Chicago Bears head coach Ben Johnson to apologize for his post-game behavior.
How about no?
How about no?
Yeah.
Oh my God! And the picture in the story going in for the handshake. Look at Johnson.
Oh, it's the best. I know.
Such a great. But that still shot though.
Yeah. He's like, let's do it. Here's your handshake.
So
let's get it. Oh, how about it?
Oh, and then we talked about Keyshawn Nixon.
Yes.
Jumping out of the way of the DeAndre Swift touchdown. And I've reposted it on X. My God,
told you.
That's a great shot of it though too.
Boink.
Yeah, he boink. It's exactly the sound effect that would go with it.
Like
he literally hopped from both feet like a bunny. He's like boink,
out of the way.
Yes, out of the way. We want the Bears unless we have to tackle them. We don't want them.
We want them. We just don't want to have to touch them if we don't want to.
Never gonna do that.
Damn it.
Oh, good stuff. All right, Tim Jenkins, are you ready now?
I'm getting there.
You ready for the Rams? Ready for another Bears victory? Another Sunday night post-game show where we celebrate a Bears win?
I'm always ready for that. You know that.
Hey, we are just one Niners upset away from hosting the NFC Championship game. Take care of the Rams, and we'll know on Saturday. We'll know Saturday night.
Visions of Bernard burying into the end zone against the Saints.
They're the late game Saturday night.
Cedric Benson. Yeah, Bears are.
No, the Saturday night. Yeah,
yes.
The Niners-Eagles are late game. Or Niners and Seahawks are late game.
And you really think the Niners are going to beat them?
I do. That's what I want. I said that 2 weeks ago. This is how I want it to play out.
Okay.
I think the Niners will go there and win. I really do. And then the Niners have to come to Soldier Field and bear weather.
Now you're trolling me.
Now I'm trolling you, yes.
All right.
Because we all believe in bear weather.
That thanks to Tim Jenkins. That's going to do it for
Great
Forward
stuff.
Progress, a Chicago Bears podcast. Bernstein and Abaticola on 312 Sports.
Forward progress has stopped. 10, 219, 219.
Forward Progress, a Chicago Bears podcast with Dan Bernstein and Matt Abaticola on 312 Sports.